for joining me today for this Know to Grow series. In this series, we are talking a lot about things that we believe and why we believe them. We are people of the Word, so we're always going to have scripture to back up everything that we talk about. And so if you ever have any questions or you would like some additional resources on what we're talking about today or on any of the topics that we talk about in these videos, online, or even on Sunday mornings, we would love to put that information in your hand and point you to scripture and theology and why we believe what we believe. Today we're going to talk about foot washing. We believe in foot washing. Now that's not something that we do every Sunday because of the size of our congregation. We facilitate it often a little bit different, but it is something that we believe in. Sometimes it may look like taking a baby wipe and wiping off a shoe. Sometimes we may actually physically take off our shoes and bring out a basin of water, depending on the service and attendance and how many people are there and how we can facilitate that with such a large group. But we do believe in the washing of the saints' feet. We believe in that literally. Jesus is the example for that. I'm not going to have time to read the entire chapter of John 13, but I am going to read a portion of it. And I would encourage you, as you're watching this video, maybe to pause and to read John chapter 13, or later on as you get time to read that and spend some time in the Word. And as always, if you ever have any questions about foot washing or about something else, we would love to put some material and some resources in your hand and have further discussions about those things. This scripture takes place in the Passover. It's in the middle of the Passover meal. This is right before Jesus is going to be crucified, and he's having his last supper with his disciples and spending time with them. And I'm going to start in John chapter 13, beginning with verse 4. And this is speaking of Jesus. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" And Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." Jesus, "No," said Peter. "You should never wash my feet." And Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who've had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that is why he said, "Not every one of you is clean." When they had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set you an example, so that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a master greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." And that's John chapter 13. I read from verse 14 till about verse 17. So Jesus comes as a servant. He comes as a servant. We know that Middle Eastern culture is a culture of hospitality. We know that often it was a servant who took the position of washing feet. The roads were very dirty. They were very dusty. Not that the disciples were dirty, but their feet were dirty. They had picked up things on their way to the supper, on their way to Passover. There were dirt, things on the road that had attached themselves to their feet. And that's often how we are in our Christian life. We are not necessarily dirty. We've asked Jesus to forgive us. We are cleansed. But often in life, there are things that can attach themselves to us. We know that we are in the world and not of the world. We know that we are just passing through, as the saints say, and just passing through this world. But as we're passing through, often at work and at school, there are attitudes that can begin to attach themselves to our feet. And we've got to be careful not to let those hurts, not to let things that people may say or things that may happen to us or even our feelings to stay attached to us. We've got to allow the Lord to, just as Jesus washed the disciples' feet, to continually come and wash our feet, to continually cleanse us of things that have attached themselves to us, things that and attitudes and things that we may have allowed to get on us. We've got to allow the Lord to wash us so that those things don't stay on us, and allow him to cleanse us. Another powerful thing I think in this scripture is that we know that Jesus knew who was going to betray him. Jesus knew that he was washing the feet of Judas, who would later betray him. I believe when Jesus looked in Judas's eyes, he knew. He knew that Judas was going to betray him, yet he still loved Judas. He still washed Judas's feet. I think when Jesus came to Simon, he knew that Simon would doubt him. He knew that Simon would have to feel the nail hole in his hand and feel that and see that in order to believe. As he was washing Simon's feet, I think he knew. As he was washing Peter's feet, I think he knew that as passionate as Peter was, and as gung-ho as Peter was, and we see that throughout scripture, that Peter would deny Jesus 3 times before midnight. Within just such a short amount of time, Peter would continually deny Jesus. Yet Jesus loved Peter anyway. And what a model of Christ's love for the church, that even though the church, he knows that we're not perfect, and he knows that we're going to make mistakes, and he knows that as best as we can live for him, we're still sometimes going to come up short. Yet he loves us anyway, and he loves us enough to serve us. As I was preparing for this message, my mind went to church hurt. I know that there is no hurt like church hurt, and we walk through that. And I know that sometimes, unfortunately, the church can be responsible for wounding one of its members and for hurting one of its members. I wanted to say that, no one has ever been more wounded by the church than Jesus. And church hurt is a real thing, and it hurts, and unfortunately it happens. And maybe that's where you're at today. The Lord just impressed that so strongly upon my heart. Maybe you've been wounded by the church and you've been hurt by the church. Let me encourage you to allow the Lord to do a work in your heart. Allow the Lord to wash you, to wash that off of you, where you don't carry that hurt into the next season that God has for you. Here at Redemption Point, we're in a new season. Pastor Travis has been preaching about new season, and they're just such a season of expectation for our church, and we're just so excited about what God is doing. But I think that we as Christians and we as believers, and even though we're in the world but not of the world, we're walking through the world, we have to be careful not to allow things to get on our feet, not to allow things to attach themselves to us. And so I want to encourage you today, wherever you are, wherever you're watching this video, maybe you have a hurt that's happened from the church, or maybe your job or your family or something's happened, or you've done something or said something or entertained a thought or an attitude or whatever it is. Let me encourage you today, take a moment and ask the Lord to cleanse you. Ask the Lord to continue the work, just as he washed the disciples' feet, to wash you today and to cleanse you, so that we don't take that attitude or that thought or that hurt into the next season. And then, as an example, Jesus wants us to love those who are going to wound us, those who've hurt us, those who in our lives who have maybe wronged us. Jesus said, you will be blessed if you serve them. You will be blessed if you love them and if you forgive them, just as his example of the disciples that he showed here in John chapter 13. And so let me encourage you today, if somebody's wronged you, take a moment and pray about that. Ask the Lord to forgive you for maybe the feelings that you're having, and able to forgive them and move on from that. Wash their feet and leave it there, just as Jesus did. Jesus washed their feet, serve them. If you can find a way to serve them, maybe it's a boss or an employer who's treated you wrongly, forgive them and find a way to serve them. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's somebody in the church who's hurt you. It's important that we don't carry that, and we don't harbor those hurts and in our heart that can turn into bitterness, but that we go to them and we say, you know what, this hurt me, but I forgive you, and I want to serve you just as Jesus served the disciples. Because again, no one in the history of the world has been more hurt by the church than Jesus. And Jesus was able to forgive, and Jesus was able to wash the feet and serve those of whom had hurt him the most in his earthly life. And so I just want to encourage you today, as you're watching this video, to ask the Lord to cleanse you and to continually cleanse us, because we all need cleansing at one time or another, and it needs to be a daily, Lord, if there's anything that I've done, anything that I've said, anything that's gotten an attitude that maybe has attached itself to me, Lord, cleanse me, and help me to serve those who have hurt me, to serve those who I know are going to persecute me, those who I know are going to talk about me, who are going to gossip about me. Help me to serve them just as you served the disciples. I hope you're having an incredible day today. And if you need any discipleship resources, again, please reach out. We would love to put some information in your hand. Looking forward to this next season that we believe that God is opening up a door to. Have an incredible day, and God bless you.